Hello everyone, this is SMAW and welcome to a deck tech for the $1 challenge, which is run on Thursday nights by MattDog007 on MTGO, through Gatherling of course. And that format is a variation on Standard that's very similar to Heirloom if you're familiar with that, in which, well, the difference is that all lands are legal regardless of their individual cost, but the spells have to be under $1, and then that's checked every 4 weeks. So it's a very rich mana base, but a very we'll call it the pauper style of cards. Even though obviously there's a lot of rares that are legal, that are actually a lot of very powerful cards that are legal. Just the cream of the crop, the things that are used in the tier 1 decks generally are what are not legal. So this is a Maze's End deck. My own variation on it to sort of slub into this format. Important to note, there are a couple of specific cards that have been banned in this format, which is why I'm playing Maze's End. Specifically, Burning Tree Emissary and Blood Artist have both been banned, and I think that positions this deck very well to deal with most of the other decks. Alright, now, if you look at the the Maze's End is obviously our victory condition, and it's kind of like a really, really unfast thawing glacier. Sort of like a frozen glacier, but it's also our victory condition because when you get all 10 gates, you win. So we have 2 of each guild gate, except that Dimir and Golgari we're running an extra 1 of each because predominantly our spells tend to be black, blue, or green. There are a couple that are splashing, like I have some white and a tiny bit of red. Really, the only red spell is actually a red-white spell, which makes it somewhat hard to cast, but I've rarely had problems casting it. And it's just such a powerful removal spell that it's well worth the chance of it occasionally being dead in my hand. Alright, the card that I need to most explain is Elixir of Immortality, because Elixir of Immortality is not a good card. It's in here for 2 reasons. One, this deck runs a lot of removal spells, but it has a high vulnerability to targeted land destruction. Like if my opponent's running cards that'll enable him to get rid of particular lands, like Acidic Slime, a recursive Acidic Slime especially, it can very easily prevent me from winning. Like if they destroy all my Maze's Ends, I'm just sort of... my only way of winning potentially would be to attempt to try and kill them with Ceruli Gatekeepers. And the 2/4 body, it probably isn't getting the job done. So this is a backup plan to prevent me from decking myself, and as well as to, if need be, get my Maze's Ends back. The life gain is not entirely useless because this deck is a little slow out the gate. Gates. But potentially, since I have no turn 1 drops, I can go turn 1 this, or well, really turn 2, because this deck plays on, this deck is always going to be a turn behind your opponent. But, turn 2 this, and then if they don't play something for me to Devour Flesh, or if I don't have a Think Twice or Devour Flesh, I can just burn it to gain 5 life, or just leave it there and eventually gain the 5 life. So, it's not a terrible card, but it's not a good card. Alright, next we have Think Twice. Think Twice is obviously an amazing card. It smooths out your draw. This deck has a very crucial get to 4 mana in play window, because it just kind of needs 4 lands to be able to activate Maze's End, and that gets you just the rest of the way. But a lot of its spells tend to be at that 3 range with varying colors, so you kind of need 4 lands to actually be able to hit all your colors and cast all your spells. Devour Flesh, now, before I was running 4 Far and Aways and 1 Devour Flesh, I decided that since my main victory condition does not actually care about what my opponent's life is, I almost never got to Far and Away something. Devour Flesh is probably just a better choice. It's cheaper, and on a slower draw against a faster draw, it's just a better card than Far and Away. Even though Far and Away is a more powerful card, it's a little faster. 2 Tributes to Hunger. These are amazing because they can give you that extra stall. Like they lose a creature, and hopefully you maybe blank an attack step, or like half an attack step. And it's all about really blanking. Like, if you can prevent them from killing you for 10 turns, you kind of win with this deck. This deck usually wins around turn 11 or 12. Okay, Detention Spheres. Just an awesome card. It's a great catch-all. It removes pretty much anything except for another Detention Sphere. So, there's that. Putrefy is the reason this deck is mostly black, green, blue. I mean, it's one of the best removal spells you can ask for. And it also happens to catch artifacts on the off chance there's some particular artifact you need to remove. We have one Far and Away still. It's mostly going to be cast as a way, but the option to occasionally bounce a creature is... I mean, really, that comes down to occasionally, if I'm getting really greedy, I can bounce this Cerulean Gatekeeper, make my opponent sacrifice a creature, and then play this Cerulean Gatekeeper again next turn and get even more life. Sever the Bloodlines. Now, there was some debate I had over whether or not there should be 2 more Tribute to Hungers or Sever the Bloodlines. And ultimately, the fact this exiles the creature, and it gives me a main deck option to exile a targeted creature, because a recursive Acidic Slimes could be a real problem. A recursive really anything can be a big problem for this deck. So that's why it's in here. Also, the Flashback. 7 mana is actually not that unreachable for this deck. Like, once it gets the Maze's End going, hitting 7 is not really you're going to do that by like turn 8 or 9. And you've almost won the game at that point. But if you desperately need to remove a creature, flashing it back is a really good card advantage. Cerulean Gatekeeper is sort of it's the only creature in the deck. It's sort of the all-star, though. Its ability to stop an early ground rush, as well as gain back 7 life, which can be huge. Like, that's like 2 really solid burn spells, or a full, like, really good attack step that you get back. And really, this deck is all about stalling things out till you can Maze's End for that last one. War Leader's Helix is sort of the same thing. It's kind of like Tribute to Hunger, except it's a little bit more versatile. You can nail a creature for 4, usually killing it, and give yourself 4 life, which it will often, once again, blank an attack step, and possibly even put you ahead on the life total. Urban Evolution, yeah. This is about as often as it is just a 5-mana Explore. And really, I wouldn't play a 5-mana Exploration, but I'd probably play like a 3-mana Exploration in this deck. But the option to play a 5-mana spell that gives you 3 cards, which is perfectly acceptable, and to give you that potential to end the game 1 turn faster, is awesome. And Merciless Eviction. To be honest, if they were legal, there are a number of other sweepers that this would be. It would be Supreme Verdict, it would be Mizium Mortars, but those aren't legal, so I have Merciless Eviction, which is still strong, but it's really expensive. It's slow. But the fact that it exiles can be important, and the fact that it can hit pretty much anything also is important. Sometimes it's 6 mana Naturalize. Sometimes it's 6 mana Shatter. Sometimes it's 6 mana Destroy Target Plane. Actually, it's never going to be 6 mana Destroy Target Planeswalker, because there are no legal Planeswalkers in this format. Alright, now let's go to the sideboard. It's actually pretty simple. Alright, we have our alternate victory condition. I usually side these in if I feel that my opponent might have a way of interacting with my main victory condition. And this actually can win the game faster than Maze's End. But if they have enchantment removal, it becomes much more vulnerable. Like against mono black, for instance, this is actually pretty good. Or like against a tap-out control deck, it's pretty good. Sever the Bloodline. Just a 4th Sever the Bloodline for decks that use a lot of recursion. 4 Deadweights. That's new for this week. I wanted a 1-mana removal spell, and I didn't. This deck does not run enough red to play Pillar of Flame or Shock, really. And I think Deadweight's just a better card overall for the same purpose in this deck. Since, I mean, in theory, against a 3/3, it can be almost as good by just making it a 1/1. Which, yeah, it's a 20-turn clock. I'll beat a 20-turn clock. A lot faster than I'll beat a 7-turn clock. So 4 Deadweights just as a nice 1-mana removal spell. Those are going to come out, like, generally, the high end's going to come out for this. Like, probably if I'm pulling these in, I'm pulling out 2 Urban Evolutions and, like, 2 like a War Leader's Helix and a Sever the Bloodline, just because they're too expensive or slow. Detention Spheres. If my opponent's running a lot of things that are not creatures that are a threat, like if they're doing a lot of enchantments or a lot of like stuff I need to interact with that I can't just shoot creatures that aren't just creatures, that's when the Detention Spheres come in, as will the Merciless Evictions usually. Well, the extra Merciless Eviction. Potentially, if they're not running a lot of permanents, that's when the Psychic Strike comes in. I mean, I don't think I've ever actually brought it in, but against a deck that's heavily spell-based, yeah, I'm going to bring in the Psychic Strike. And the War Leader's Helix is sort of a catch-all in case something else is bad, because the War Leader's Helix is so rarely bad. That's pretty much the deck tech. And, often, Elixir of Immortality is going to be one of the things that gets sided out a lot, too, because if I'm pretty sure my opponent doesn't have a game plan to stop me from... If my opponent's game plan doesn't have a way to interact with my game plan, I don't need Elixir of Immortality. Elixir of Immortality is a dead card against somebody that doesn't actually have a way to interact with the fact that my deck is mostly about lands. Okay, thank you, and hope you watch the games. And I do apologize for the dogs barking. They are quite unruly.